Welcome to the Tech Matchmaker podcast. I'm Gina Gibson, founder of Think Forward, where we match organizations to customer experience technology based on your requirements, your budget, and your team. We're back for season 2, and we're kicking things off with something we haven't done before, a joint interview with our customer and our vendor partner together in the same conversation. Joining me today is Liz Subia from QMetrics and Dan McCann from SymTrain. Liz, this is your first time on the show and our very first customer joining us, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Gina.
And Dan, of course, welcome back, and you are our first returning guest.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great accolade. That's my favorite thing I heard all day, Gina. Excited to be talking, especially talking with Liz, right?
Exactly. So today we're going to cover the full arc, right? How the problem showed up, how the process worked, and whether the results were worth it. And for our audience, spoiler alert, they were. Liz, why don't you set the stage for us and tell our audience what QMetrics does and what your role is there?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. So again, my name is Liz. I am the Director of Communications and Engagement at QMetrics. Part of that role is managing the contact center. And what QMetrics is really a pot of different things. We are a consulting firm in healthcare, but we do several different things. One of the things we do is surveys on behalf of our clients. And that's surveys that are regulatory required by the Department of Managed Healthcare, Department of Healthcare Services, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Solutions. So lots of regulations that we need to follow. Aside from that, we do quality accreditation or assist health plans in reaching that goal, and a lot of reporting and analytics. In a nutshell, that's what we do.
Excellent. And Dan, would you briefly introduce yourself for anyone who missed your last episode with us?
Yeah, definitely. I was hoping Liz would introduce that white, beautiful, fluffy thing in the background as well. So,
No, they're so
Dan,
cute.
Dan McCann, CEO, founder of SymTrain, which is simulation training, as the name says. And it's an AI coaching platform that really delivers a continuous development and a continuous coaching process for our customers. So when you're onboarding new agents and new hires, giving them repetition, role play, reinforcement as to how to apply knowledge and perform their job, and then taking that through the entire life cycle of an agent by tying that to their performance scorecards to deliver personalized training and coaching exercises throughout the whole life cycle. Super fun, excited, and eager to hear what Liz has to say about the experience and share some amazing stories that we've had with Liz and team at QMetric.
Excellent. Now, Liz, let's go back to before you and I started working together. Tell us a little bit about what was actually happening on the floor and what was breaking down and kind of who was feeling it.
Yes. So I did mention all the powers that be that we report to, right, or the ones that we have to follow in order for us to make sure our jobs are being done effectively. We are a highly regulated company. We have to meet certain levels of quality excellence and lots of standards. Um, that being said, a lot of our leadership team was spending time in training rather than prioritizing other tasks or responsibilities that, or their time could have been used in better. I can tell you I've been here for 5 years, and even before that, our JD was the one completing the trainings that SymTrain is doing for us now, because there's so much detail, because there's so many regulations, because there are so many little things that we have to program and train and look for. We needed to spend the time in those trainings to make sure they were quality trainings and they had the level of detail that all of our surveys require. So that was one of the major problems or major pain points is all of the time that was being spent by leadership in training sessions. So just to give you an idea, one of our trainings for just one survey is a 2-day training. That was 2 leadership members, or a total of 32 hours that we were spending just on training. And it was taking a lot from us. And that's where we realized we need to find a solution that's going to help us reduce that time, but also maintain the same level of quality in the trainings that we're performing.
And what had you already tried? Clearly, it had been going on for the 5 years that you've been there, but what had you already tried, and what made you finally decide to bring in outside help rather than handling the vendor search internally?
Yes. So initially we were doing everything in person, right? It was in-person trainings. We were using PowerPoint presentations. And then we thought, well, instead of being in person, let's record the PowerPoint presentations. They can review those and then we'll come in for a shorter session. That didn't work. There were a lot more questions than when we were doing the in-person trainings because there wasn't somebody there to explain the terminology, the different regulations, the different companies that we're reporting to. So that didn't work. We then transitioned to doing smaller PowerPoint presentations with quizzes alongside to see, okay, let's test their knowledge and see if they're capturing that information. Um, that didn't work. We have a quality assurance supervisor, and we thought, okay, she knows the ins and outs of the surveys. She knows what we're looking for. Let's have her complete the trainings, and we'll cut them down to be shorter in the amount of time, at least, that leadership is spending in them. Um, but she's a quality assurance supervisor. She doesn't know the ins and outs and the legalities and the compliance standards. So that didn't work out either. So then we realized, okay, we still need to be able to incorporate all of that, but do it through some sort of program or system that's going to help us reduce that time significantly. Because let's be honest, you don't want to hear Liz talk for 8 hours for 2 days in a row. I mean, is your attention span going to be there? Are you really going to listen to Liz, for 16 hours? So we needed to find a solution where they weren't just going to hear Liz's voice, but they were still going to capture and retain that information.
And I know when we met, Liz, you had kind of been looking through different solutions out there and trying to compare the different things. But I just want to walk the audience through a quick little overview of what the process that we went through actually looked like. Because I think you had mentioned, you were looking at different vendors. We don't just drop off a list of vendors. Like, you and I sat down and we gathered all your requirements and we looked at what's non-negotiable, what's the budget look like. What was different in your case is most times we'll bring 3 to 5 vendors to the table, but in this case, we found the one vendor that matched your profile, not the typical short list. And so when I told you that, how are you still able to have confidence in the process that we found you the right person in SymTrain?
Well, I'll be honest, at first I thought, oh no, she already found one. Am I ready for it? That was the initial thought. Like, am I really ready? Um, but actually going through the process and you explaining it and finding really the one vendor that it wasn't only going to be a vendor. I wasn't just going to be a client. I was going to be a partner because that's what it sounded like from the very beginning. It didn't sound transactional. It didn't sound like, you're going to pay us and we're going to give you or deliver what you're asking for. It sounded like a partnership. And I think that's really where I was like, okay, I know she found the right one. Then the nerves kick in, right? Like, am I really ready? Am I going to be able to implement this system myself?
I love it. And Dan, from the vendor side, you came in through a matchmaker versus a direct kind of sale or RFP. And how was that quality of that conversation different from your usual sales process?
So Gina, it's awesome because if you think about it, we're coming in from a point of credibility instead of needing to prove a certain level of credibility, right? So we can actually do that partner approach where we're dissecting the problem together, what the solution looks like, and really talking through like deployments and implementation and value equation and how we're going to measure those things together. And because they trust us, right? And they trust us because of Tech Matchmaker, of you guys and Gina, your relationship that you've built with Liz and team for the work you did. So it's an awesome feeling when you come in and it's like you're already treated like you're a vendor, like that you're already a partner, even though you're still in a sales process. And it's a way more it's a way faster process. It's a way better aligned process to the problem and the problem statement. And I think like Liz and team were way more open with us, right? They treated like us like we were the consultant, with you, right? And so how do we get to solution? How do we open up and be open and honest and share our problems? So we love working with folks like yourself, Gina, because you give us that credibility going in.
Excellent. And Liz, once you met Dan and the team, What made you say yes? Like, what specifically did they do or say, aside from the partnership approach and knowing that it would be a partnership versus vendor, customer relationship? What did they say or do that confirmed they were the right fit for you?
On a selfish level and a personal level, the way Marielle presented, her demo and the way Artie was there supporting and backing up everything she was saying, I was like, perfect. They're basically doing the work for me. But on an organizational level, Dan came in and he's like, hey, let me ask you these questions. I'll put together an ROI for you so that you guys can really see the impact that this is going to make for your organization. That to me sealed the deal only because we have certain values in our company, right? Agility, transparency, and that relationship focused partnership are three of our values, and they hit them right on the mark. They were being transparent about their product. Then the fact that Dan's like, hey, like let's meet with Jim, your boss, and I'll go over this ROI with you, this structure, so that you guys see really the benefit to it. That to me spoke on so many different levels because that's really what they look for. I look at how is it going to help me and my team? How is the contact center going to improve with this product? They look at the money, which they need to. And Dan was ahead of the game on that. So to me, it was like, okay, I can sit down with my leadership team and I can go through this and I know I'm going to get a yes because I already have all the questions that they have answered ahead of time. So that really did it.
And I think that's key, Dan, because contracting, like the next kind of phase or the next step in any engagement, right, is contracting. And honestly, that's where a lot of deals sometimes go to die, right? Is people not being able to come to terms. And so I think two factors, right? The partnership, the ROI up front, and I think having clear requirements and criteria labeled up front. Do you believe that helped the process? Like when you were talking to your leadership, Liz and Dan, for you, did it make it an easier process going through the contracting and making it simpler for the customer?
Absolutely. And Jim, I spent time with Jim since then, right? And he's commented on that same thing that Liz mentioned. Like there was an appreciation for our understanding of their decision process and how they would paper their decision process and validate that decision as well. We actually call it the sequence of events, right? What happens once Liz says, hey, this is something I'm interested in? What are the steps that have to happen in order to get them to a point where they are making a decision, they're contracting a decision, and they know that, hey, we're working with someone who's going to go validate that data for us to make sure that, that decision that we made is proven and we're getting the return on that investment. So that's all of those things are really important for the sequence of events to take place. And we've been through some, like one of the things that we have is a little bit of, I think, tenacity and stick-to-itness, right? So in the past, we've been through 6, 12, even 18-month procurement cycles with some customers. Not the case with Liz and team, but having done that and you do it, you're like, hey, what do we need to do to get through faster, get prepared better, like on our end, and that we could also help the client with it. So yeah, absolutely, that does help a lot.
Excellent. And so the next phase, being implementation, is where promises sometimes get stress tested. So, Liz, give us the honest version. What went smoothly and where did you hit some friction points?
I will tell you that I think maybe we caused more friction than SymTrain did, only because from the beginning, our timeline was this big. It was okay, we're gonna say yes, and you have 2 weeks to, get us up and running. Like it was a really short time frame. Um, but the way that the training was set up, the structure that they had was really easy for us to follow. I think for me, where I had friction was I learned it and now I have to develop all these trainings, but I didn't have that level of knowledge to make them appear, because there's different kinds of trainings. You could do um, visual and it could have, a lot of little detail where, words are flying in or there's music. I learned the basics. So to me, I was like, no, but I wanted to do that. So it's going back to Artie, going back to our project manager and saying, hey, I need to learn this. I need to do this. There wasn't enough time for me to learn everything. And I was the one building and creating this. So that caused friction. I didn't have the time. There was the willingness to learn and the willingness to teach and coach, but there wasn't the time to do it. So we kind of had to split it. And that to me is frustrating because I want to do it myself kind of person. And I realistically didn't have that time. So Artie and I had to kind of split the work. So I would develop the material, but then her team would take care of creating it. And that to me was frustrating because I wanted to do it. I couldn't. I wanted to learn it. I didn't have the time. Artie came in, the team came in, the sim creators were amazing. They took care of it. And I still need to go back because I still want to learn what I wasn't able to learn last year when we implemented this. But it was a time crunch, and that I think was the biggest friction of it all is that, times we didn't meet. Sometimes I couldn't make it to certain meetings, or trainings that Artie already had set up. So she had to work around me. Sometimes I had to work around her. Um, but that was really the biggest thing is time. Time was friction.
And I don't think you're alone in that being a constraint in probably the implementations, Dan, you've seen in the past as well. But I think how SymTrain or a vendor handles problems tells you as a customer more than how they handle the easy parts, right? So,
I
Dan,
agree.
once again, wonderful for your team showing up the way they did. Was there any other points or positives or negatives that you ran into that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things Liz mentioned, right, is the time that she has and her team has on their side, right? And we'd love like announcing how fast SymTrain is. You can build fast, deploy fast, deliver fast. We lost a deal in the fall this year, and I hate losing. Oh, I think about losing all the time, more so than I think about the wins, right? And we lost the deal because they're like, hey, one of the things that you guys did that we didn't love is you were like too fast. Like, what? Like we couldn't keep up with you. Like you were always pushing speed and delivery and we weren't able to keep up. So our team never did a really great job of telling about the Artie story and the sim creators behind the scenes and all the things you get when you sign up for SymTrain to get you there too if you're not ready and help you get to your time frames and your outcomes, right? So that's really important, as well. And I think one of the fun things that Liz did with our team is help on the curriculum design. So it's not just the creation of the training and building the sims so agents can learn to perform better and faster, but then how do we deliver them, when, where, how, or spaced practice, right? Variances of practice, the delivery sequencing, how do we do that? So we worked with Liz over the first couple of training classes to really start to perfect that within her curriculum and have a bigger impact by class 3 than we did with class 1. So that was a good, I think, lesson for my team from Liz.
That's excellent. And Liz, quick question and a direct one for you. Did SymTrain deliver what they said they would?
Absolutely delivered. 100%. I I don't know if Artie is our project manager. I don't know if she's the only project manager, but man, she's amazing to work with. She really understands what the needs are. And I'll give you an example. And I think it ties into what we're talking about now is there were some trainings that we created that we had to recreate. Not because they were incorrect, but because there were things that Artie and her team would ask. And it was like, well, yeah, that detail would be important to include. So they're learning as they're helping me create these trainings and they're asking me questions where I'm like, well, I didn't think about it because I do this on a daily basis. But they're learning it in order to create it. So yes, let me add on to the training. So we had iterations, of the same training that we created because just more detail, more questions were coming up and we added to that. But on top of that, going back to what Jan said is we learned a lot from the first set of trainings to the third set of trainings. And it showed in the impact that it made in the agents and their scoring. It was such a huge difference. Like I was having people do 5 iterations of a training, and Dan was like, 2 should be enough. They shouldn't have to do more than that because then they start losing interest. And when I went back to the scoring, I was like, oh yeah, second, third are the highest scores. And then they kind of start dwindling. So we cut them to be shorter. They retain the information. They did great when we were doing our quality assurance. It showed there. So it's like, okay, so I'm wasting time, that they could already be using on the phones. So, it's been a lot of learning and still learning. I've been doing this for years, 5 years in this specific, area. And from the last time that Dan and I saw each other, I came back with a list of like 20 additional trainings to create. And it's not, that my trainings aren't good. It's that, no, I can do different levels and I could do this and I can do that. And the team could learn it this way. So, you know, it's evolving. It's growing. It's helping me make my agents better and have less questions. So it's just been great.
That's
Gina,
wonderful. And
I was
oh,
asked to do a keynote for one of our partners, one of our BPO partners, and Liz is a customer of theirs, and I said, "Yep, I will absolutely do the keynote as long as Liz can get on stage and do it with me." So we had the fun of delivering the keynote for a annual customer get together event together. So that was awesome.
that's fantastic. And I was just going to say, I think the process that Liz is describing, like the rewriting or whatever, that's a normal thing to happen, isn't it, Dan? Like we're after maybe the first training, you're like, oh, okay, we can gain efficiencies here. So let's rewrite it and shorten them or whatever. So the process you went through, I think, is typical. Or do you want to talk to that a little bit, Dan?
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, there's two things that we've learned, right? And I talked about hating losing, so you learn more from your losses and your punches in the face sometimes. But one of the things we learned is you have to create good sims in order to develop the right behaviors and practices, right? So that's really important. And then the second is how you deploy those sims and what sequence and timeframes, and in order to drive, quite frankly, the neuroscience of learning, right? And coaching, right? Because people have to lean in and get excited about what you're asking them to do, not think about this thing as a penalty or a punishment, right? And how do I do this where this is supporting my journey as a learner? And one of the things Liz learned is like, hey, if I have somebody spending time to do 15 sims in SymTrain versus 2, like that's awesome, right? It's like, well, maybe they're just wasting time on purpose, right? So you're learning things through behaviors inside of a technology and a platform about people that's not directly related to the scorecards that are coming out of SymTrain, right? And we're telling you how well they're performing, what their handle time is, what's the probability of a higher CSAT, and what's their accuracy rate, all inside of SymTrain. But then when you look at activities in there, you can tell about human behavior as well and the probability of how well they're going to perform in role and on the job. So those are definitely things that our clients have to do all the time. And then absolutely, I think learning is an iterative approach, right? You build a product, you're doing design thinking, right? You're giving it to a customer saying, we love this, but this is okay, improve that. Then you give them the next phase and, hey, what about this, right? And that's same thing with learning how to perform anything and apply knowledge. So when you have a client who leans in, builds the content, gets the feedback from the team and the outcomes of the performance on the floor, and then they're willing to go back and make some adjustments to that content, that's when you really have a great outcome in how you're going to develop human talent over time.
And since we're on the topic of stats, let's talk about results. So give us some specifics, Liz. Like, how did your ROI improve? I know that's a lot of what the audience is, they love numbers, love stats. And so let's talk about whether implementing a process like this is worth it and what you're actually measuring and how the numbers look so far.
Yes. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is the time, right? The amount of time that it took away from us. So SymTrain helped us with training time, reducing the amount of human time dedicated to being part of those trainings. We became more efficient. Our agents became more efficient, and we've reduced coaching. Um, all great impacts, all what we were looking for to make sure that the system could do it. But we're speaking numbers, right? So when we started training, we were spending 32 hours, human hours, in training sessions. From those 32 hours to when we implemented SymTrain, those hours reduced to 4 hours. And that reduced to 4 hours only because I still like to introduce myself. I still like to introduce the company. And I still like to have a Q&A session at the end of every training day, just to see if there's any areas that they need to address or that they have additional questions on. 4 hours is all it took me this year, or I should say 2025, because we haven't started our surveys this year yet. But we went from 32 hours to 4 hours, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. You're taking a director and a supervisor away from this training and letting us, complete our other competing priorities, which was great. We were able to set up for our survey year for the following year. It was really, really helpful. What does that translate to is about close to $14,000 of cost saved when it comes to trainers, which is, I think, fantastic. Where can I apply that in my contact center next? Who can I give a bonus to? What else can I do?
Yeah, and Liz, I was actually going to say closer to 28K, right? Because it's not just those two people and the trainers, but
Yeah,
it's the trainees and that impact that they're not actually having in production because they're still stuck in
yep,
training too. So
you're right. And on top of that, 20% of training time, we're saving 20% of training, which is great. It is fantastic. It's just been so, so good. So good. So 432 hours, I think, altogether of training that have been reduced because
Wow.
we do have, right, it's three different trainings that we do because we work with three different contact centers. So combining that all, I think, Dan, I told you from the beginning, I'm not good with the numbers. So thank you for correcting me there. But, you
so
know, that's what it comes down to. It's a lot of time, hours, and money that we're saving.
And Dan, is this typical? Is
yeah.
Liz's typical response, or is Liz a lucky customer?
No, look, I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers come out to what they come out to. It's almost like $3,500 per agent per year, right? And you allocate that across agents. Like we have clients with 10,000 agents, and they're reporting $20 million, right? It's like, really, $20 million? That seems like a lot, especially for a product that is not even costing you seven figures to purchase. But the answer is like, that's not a lot, right? It's per agent. It's not a whole lot, right? Liz said, 450, 480 hours, but yet the math says it's about $1,000 they're saving per hour. That's a $500,000, right? Across how many agents, Liz?
31.
30. 31, right? So you
Yeah.
do the math, it's all of a sudden, it's like you'd multiply that times 1,000, 10,000. You're saving $500,000 against 30 agents. Think about what you're going to do on 10,000 agents. So yeah, absolutely. Maybe the savings aren't as much, per agent, but it adds up,
It adds up,
Gina.
absolutely. And Liz, if you had to name the single decision that made your project succeed, what was it?
Ripping the Band-Aid off, saying I'm not going to spend another year, speaking to people 16 hours. SymTrain's going to take care of all of it. They didn't hear Liz's voice until those Q&A sessions because SymTrain has like 100 different voices that we can pick from. But it was really, I have a hard time, not with change, but with letting go. And this was one area where I was ready to let go. And I didn't want to do it in sections. I didn't want to say, well, I'll do the training, half of the time, and then I'll have them go on SymTrain. I just ripped the Band-Aid off and I said, no, it's SymTrain 100%. And that gave us a lot of valuable lessons. And it also showed me how much more prepared we are than what we thought. We had all our ducks in a row when it came to documentation and training. Transferring all of that into SymTrain and making it easy and fun for the agents to learn, was even better. And that's what we did. I really transferred all that knowledge into SymTrain, and SymTrain took care of the rest.
What's one thing you wish you had known before you went in that you may have done differently?
All the ideas that were going to come off of the first few trainings I recreated. So now I'm stuck here, and I'm saying stuck, but I'm stuck in a good way. And almost every day I'm writing down, create a training on this, add this to a training, so many other trainings. I'm at the point where I'm actually talking to our team about transferring all of our policies and procedures and desktop processes, administrative ones, into SymTrain. That way, when we're onboarding a person, I don't need to take the time to explain them. I can just have them on SymTrain and have them go through there to complete that training. So it's just ideas after ideas. They keep coming. We're looking to expand into other departments because it has been great in the contact center. And I think it'd be absolutely beneficial in other areas of QMetrics as well.
That's fantastic. And Dan, what did QMetrics do as a client that made your job easier and the outcome better? Because as we all know, implementation is a two-way street.
Yeah, look, I mean, that iterative piece, right? That is a two-way street, right? And so sometimes it's hard for my team to share feedback with a customer, right? And sometimes that feedback is, hey, we got to make some adjustments, right? We deployed and they're getting better, meaning my team is getting better at becoming more proactive in that communication. And Liz was like, no, bring it on. I want to know more. Tell me more, right? And so it makes it easier for somebody like an Artie, right, who's working with her and knows, hey, I need to share these things, then do it. Like if you don't, that's mean. That's not nice. You're not doing the right thing if you're not sharing that feedback with your customer like Liz. But Liz made it so much easier because she's like, please give it to me. I want more and I want to get better. And I want to make the experience with SymTrain better. So that was a big lesson learned for my team.
That's
I
excellent.
think
And
that's what makes, sorry, Gina. I was just going to add on. I think that is a key reason of why I decided I'm just going to rip that Band-Aid off and I'm going to do it because they made it easy. They shared that feedback. They helped me grow along with, what we were developing in SymTrain. Always open to feedback, and Artie was great at providing it. I think she did hesitate a little at the beginning, but once she saw, hey, Liz is open to it, she let us have it.
well, I'll tell you, looking from the cheap seats out, like from the outside in, what I observed, like, and this isn't always present. So, and I mean this as a compliment to both sides, but Liz, you didn't wait for permission to get started. Like you were in there, like sleeves rolled up and deep going, building as soon as you got access to the platform. And that kind of client energy, it could make a vendor scramble or they can rise to meet it. And Dan, your team just shone, right? Like you guys were there. There was no lag time. There was no renegotiation of scope. It just seemed like everybody knew what they were there to do and they did it from the outside. That's like what it looked like. And now, Liz, I know we talked a little bit about redoing, but where do you go from here? So you've talked about you're going to use SymTrain in other parts of the company. I know you guys mentioned you're probably going to redo some of the other scripts. Talk to us a little bit about how the evolution of how you're going to use the product is going.
Yes. So there is revamping happening, but there's also the creation and development of new trainings for the contact center because, again, I'm a little selfish when it comes to what I'm doing. I'm the contact center. But we have about 10 different areas in the company, 10 different services that we provide. And they're all very unique and very niche to the healthcare industry. So getting SymTrain to transfer over to those areas so that it is easier for our other leadership members and our other managers and directors to work through and train their staff. Um, as you know, we're a small company, tiny but mighty. We lean a lot on our consultants and our temporary agents. So it's easy to have them come back and support us. It'd be even easier once SymTrain is set up for them to, refresh their memories and just have, have them retrain on something. It's a refresher training. It's not a full training. It's already having that information in one spot for them to access and be able to jump in, to those projects as soon as they come in. I can't stress it enough, the amount of time that it saves and how much shorter these trainings are, but they still include all of the quality and all of the detail that are required, and they're short. It's a 4 or 5 minute training, and then you're jumping on to the next one. So really transitioning that to our other team members. I've already started with one. She's already working on her training so that I could get her to jump into SymTrain. And Artie's already working with me so that, she can set up additional training and support for her is where we're at. But really that and, exploring a little more on AI and other areas. But yes, we're moving to transition it to the rest of the organization.
That's excellent. And Dan, what does the roadmap look like for SymTrain, and how does a customer like QMetrics help shape where your product is moving towards?
Yeah, look, from a roadmap perspective, we spent the last 2 years heavily focused on generative AI to create faster, easier, right? You're fixing some of those friction issues for our customers. So we are the fastest, right, in the world at creating content and delivering that customized content for everyone. So that's part of the roadmap. Automatically creating visual simulations that tie in software navigation and conversations, just from either screen recordings or point and click capture, and then creating those into sims. That's awesome. Continuing to do that with the call recordings in a performance management CCAS and a connected coaching environment is a really big part of our agentic AI approach, and how we deliver that feedback and that ROI right into the portal of SymTrain, right? And what, from a learning perspective. So those are all things that we geek out on and we're super excited about. And yeah, we have customer advisory boards giving us feedback, telling us here's where that we can do better. Here's what will help us continue to grow. And that helps SymTrain continue to grow.
Excellent. Do either
That
of you have
that and
any?
referrals, that and referrals from our partners like Think Forward.
Thank you. Do either of you have anything you want to add about the process or the technology or your overall experience before we wrap up?
And just a thought. And to me, I've been in the healthcare industry for over 20 years. I've been in customer experience for the majority of those 20 years, but more dedicated to contact centers for the last 10 years. And one of my questions is always, am I keeping up with the times? Am I keeping up with technology? Am I doing what I need to? Am I, is my mind there? Am I reading enough? And working with you both has been just great. It's been fantastic. I know, Gina, I can lean on you and think forward. If I feel like I'm failing in an area, or I have questions, but I don't know that I'm wording them correctly, or maybe there's gaps in the questions that I have and I need somebody there, I know that I can lean on you for that support and for that help when it comes to technology, because I'm not a technology wizard by any means, so it's been fairly easy to work with you and be vulnerable to knowing, that I don't have all the questions and I don't know what I have to ask every time. So that's been great. But also with Dan and his team, you know, I get notifications, I think at least 2 or 3 times a week about, what's changing, what's happening, and little webinars on, how to keep up with the time. So that's also been very, very helpful and encouraging to me to keep pushing and to keep looking for other ways that I could support my contact center and do other things.
That's wonderful. And, Liz, thank you for that. And Think Forward exists because the right match really doesn't happen by accident, right? It happens when you get the requirements right before a vendor even steps in the room. So, Liz and Dan, thank you so much to both of you for telling the real story. And I know our audience is going to find it valuable. So if you're navigating a technology decision, contact center, AI, workforce management, analytics, or training, and you want a structured, vendor-neutral process that puts your requirements first, reach out to us at Think Forward. And until next time, keep matching smart and thinking forward.